Hey, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to the people out there listening to this Comerit podcast. What's up, Enterprise? Very excited to have Dr. Robert Esposito back on today. And I asked him if he'd come and join me today just because there's so much news right now, so much buzz and utilization or potential utilization of chat GBT or AIs in general. And one thing, Robert, I want to bring up, a lot of people are focused their attention on GPT 3.5, GPT 4, but there are hundreds literally of other AIs that people are leveraging, new applications that are coming up, as well as like
Yeah.
offshoots, people tapping in. I wanted to just mention there are some others that I've seen in comparison. There's another one called Alpaca. I think that one was created by the Stanford University.
Sure,
I think
sure.
that may have actually been taken down offline. I'm not sure of the details there. Another one called Vacuna, but I don't want people to think that this is only a conversation of chat GBT because in fact, there's an explosion of AI
Yeah,
solutions
yeah,
happening in the
totally.
market.
And there's a ton of things going on, and people are now starting to wake up as to thinking about how AI can help them with some of their complex issues that they're dealing with when it comes to even making websites, right? Now there's AI out there that will exploit a WordPress vulnerability and pull down information and generate a whole new website for you, stealing the templates of other things, and boo, you could have a website created for you in just minutes that would have taken some other human weeks plus a lot of money out of pocket to do something like that. People are beginning to understand that all you have to do is ask the question. I was with somebody, my son's friend, she's a cosmetologist, and she does haircutting and makeup and all that stuff. And I showed her the other day. I said, "Hey, Amanda, have you seen this?" She goes, "No." And so I said, "Okay, let's just have some fun here. Let's just ask chat about something that's important to you." And she goes, "Okay, so let's write me an essay that is persuasive to in 500 words that will express why this particular brand of hair product is better than the other." And I never even heard about that brand of hair product. And boom, you do that, and this thing spits out so much stuff in a numerical fashion because it's persuasive. It's making several different points, including it threw in there environmental,
Oh,
social, and ESG
right,
type
right.
stuff that not only is the product good, but the company is behaving well for the environment and stuff. And you're just like, oh my gosh, she was blown out of the water. And it's just beginning, right?
Yeah,
So
I've seen articles. These are popping up left and right, and I think one of the big articles is AI ready for big. There's a number of different ways that they ask that, but the reality is there are still some serious concerns for using it inside of a big organization. We heard of a number of stories very recently. A very big corporation was impacted by
oh yeah,
some interaction.
I
Yeah,
sent you that article just the other night. It's a huge,
exactly.
huge corporation.
Yeah, and
People are being very foolish putting their intellectual property in these things to help them, whether it might be code or marketing messaging or tactical type things. So the moment you throw any type of information into this system, it is now available for everybody else to use. And they may not even understand that. But if one corporation is saying, "Hey, help me make my code better," and here it is, and somebody else across the world is also asking the same types of questions, and lo and behold, boom, the same code made it better for that one corporation has now been incorporated into the code of another corporation.
right.
Now you've got competitive advantage eroding away with being all this intellectual property being released.
In this particular situation, the organization was actually given permission to, and for many reasons. This is a well-known organization, and I believe they were looking at it to help with workflow, customer service, actually design. So while they were trying to create a presentation, they loaded some very proprietary confidential information because that they needed that in their presentation.
Absolutely.
And inadvertently, they fed some trade secret in into I won't mention the AI. If you wanna
Yeah.
find out, you can do your research and see. But this is a real potential issue, and I don't suspect that's the only time that it's happened just within the last week. I can imagine
Oh,
this has happened a lot.
it's happening everywhere because people at the very beginning, people don't understand just what they're doing, or they don't understand the impact of what they're doing. They may think, "Oh, I'm just simply asking a question to help me do my job better." But then they don't think it through, where does this information go and how does it impact stuff? And now it all becomes a problem of uh, now it becomes a problem of bounds, right? So do corporations that want to use these services, how are they going to put filter bounds on there to make sure things aren't being submitted into that system and control? And that's the hard part, because what we're talking about, David, is our moral and ethical boundaries that you're not supposed to cross, right? There are compliance boundaries that you're not supposed to cross when you're a corporation. And there are just common sense boundaries. You're like, what's common sense to you and me? You're like, why would you do that? But people don't know. And the problem is, when it comes to cybersecurity and just content control in general, this is hacker mindset, right? So the moment that you, David, and I would put a bound on something, do not cross that. Now, from a nefarious standpoint, a hacker goes, "Oh, awesome. Now I know what I need to get around."
Right.
And that's what hackers do. I remember I was on a pen testing engagement years ago, and it was a very complex communication system for a very large airframe platform. Let's just call it that. And I can remember talking to an engineer. They called it an AR. They're responsible for this particular area or component. And I was basically, throwing huge number of packets that were much larger than what the spec said. And she asked me, "So what are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm throwing a 768 byte packet towards the system here." And she goes, "Why are you doing that? It can't receive anything but 512 bytes." It was a very small, interesting thing. And I said, "Oh, it's receiving it. It just doesn't know what to do with it." So the thing is, when boundaries are put in place, typical humans don't test beyond that boundary. Because why? We don't have enough time. We don't have enough manpower. It's
Power,
all
yeah,
that. It's for
sources.
resources, money, all
Mhm.
that. You have to stop somewhere when you're in a corporation. So if you go ahead and put bounds in this chat AI, and the company says, "Great, this can happen," who's testing to make sure that the bounds are actually effective? Who's actually going and saying, "How can I subvert this?" And that's that whole malware creation. It's like there's
Right, I was
one
gonna
article.
bring that up. They
Yeah.
did put bounds onto these things. There are safety mechanisms. The different artificial intelligence are trained that if someone's using this nefariously, it should shut down its program or not allow output around, say, for example, create me a hacking program to do X, Y, and Z. But we saw yesterday someone very creatively, wasn't even a great programmer, but just very creatively parsed the question and then
Yep.
came up with code to create malware. That's human ingenuity. This is where I will say humans still have this creative.
It you'll never be able to stop this process from
No,
happening,
no,
because the system only goes so far. You're like, "Okay, I just asked the system to crawl a disk, find specific types of files, and throw it in there and obfuscate and all that stuff." And if in this one particular case, it was steganography, right? It was embed these images in another image. And then that particular user malware creator threw it up to Virus Total, and Virus Total said, "Oh, it's definitely malicious." It's great. Everybody has access to Virus Total, and so do the hackers, right? So
yeah,
then they asked the system, obfuscate that code so that and then they threw it up to Virus Total, and Virus Total said, "Oh, no, it looks fine. Everything's good." And it was the same thing. But again, it was a bound. The hacker figured out a way around it, and boom, Virus Total said it's fine.
yeah. I
And it is a cat and mouse game. You're never done. There's
well,
always a way
so
around.
so that answering some of the questions, is this technology safe for big business enterprise? And I think the answer is that nothing's ever foolproof and safe, but
Well,
you have to have, and we can't fix some human error, someone accidentally clicking on the link. But I believe there are safe ways to do it, and people are they need to start to contemplate things like,
yeah, that whole given safe and effective, those are like trigger words for me at some point because with all the stuff going on. But
exactly.
so I would say rather than use the word safe, because what is that? I would say there is a best practice.
Yeah,
This if you're trusting the system to control what people do 100% safely, you're going to be very disappointed. It's impossible. The only thing that we can do is train the humans that are using these systems to think and adhere to a best practice, because there's always corner conditions. There's always that gray area that are subjected to interpretation. Again, we talked about that the last podcast, that gray area that a system's going to go, I'm not quite so sure this is bad. I'm not quite so sure it's good. I need help determining that. The system can never be 100%
right.
effective. There's always got to be the contextual problem that's addressed in the last mile of tuning and stuff like that.
Well, I think this could heed the advice that we've seen from Steve Wozniak and Elon Musk. They signed a document. Everyone's probably by now familiar. There was 1,100 plus IT superpower executives that signed a document that essentially said we need to pause all development.
Yeah, the
Now,
pause.
that the reality we know is that's like putting toothpaste back in the tube after you squeeze it, right? That's just not happening, but it's good. Go
Right.
on record and recommend that. But taking
Yeah.
that advice, would you say, this is just my opinion, I think it may be very important for large organizations to maybe spend the next 6 months before they say anyone in the organization is allowed to use this stuff. Maybe
Oh,
it's not
I
6 months, but would
yeah,
you say that
I
this?
would yeah, I would 100%. Okay, take a step back. Anytime you approach a new thing, widget or whatever, you got to ask yourself, what are we getting ourselves into? What is this? How does it behave? Do we trust the masses to help answer those questions? No, it's going to be chaos, as what we're seeing, right? Intellectual property just flying out. If you had a smaller group of trusted, trained, high efficacy types of people that their job is to answer those questions, allow them to go and do that. And that's just part of the integration of any technology into a corporation, is you have to have proper evaluation of just what it is so that you can assess the risk, because ultimately that's what we're talking about, David. It's what is the risk to the enterprise if this is used, whether it's a chat or AI, or if it's a technology widget. What is the risk? Does it reduce the risk? Oh, it solves this problem, but what other problems does it also create?
At what
It's
risk? Yeah.
like in the early 2000s, when the security information and event management tools started popping up, because back then nothing really, that was like IntelliTactics and ArcSight. I was with ArcSight at those days, when there was Protego with Cisco, and there's so many others back then, right? And so you think, oh, great, here are these tools that would consolidate all the security information into one tool so that now I have access to everything that I need. That sounds wonderful because they didn't exist before, but now you have questions like, out of the plethora of information that I have now, what is the most meaningful and relevant and what doesn't matter? It has so much noise. Now there's people are overwhelmed with too much information. And now your security teams don't know what to do with all this information, and things get lost into the weeds. And that's what happened to the Target breach many years ago, right? The
Yeah.
tools actually detected Target was breached by a third-party contractor, but it was buried in a sea of meaningless
Data.
information, and it was missed entirely. And sometimes the solution to a problem also creates new problems that were not really thought of before. And I think that's where we are with this chat AI stuff. I think people are excited about just the potential, and I am too, especially if you don't know how to write really well, but you have the information in your head. This tool can really help you write well, but it's also going to be used by people that want to cheat, that don't want to learn. They want to get through. There's just so many other things and problems that this.
Well, yeah, from a business standpoint, the real concern, okay, so truly, I want to go back and emphasize a point. I think people do need to set up like teams to evaluate, a trusted team of people to look at and evaluate. Why? Why? Because the truth of the matter is this stuff is here and it
Yep,
can create efficiencies in customer service, in
absolutely.
workflow, in design. There's lots of, if you want to use it for internal design improvement. I heard already people have been using it successfully to redesign graphics chips.
Yeah, totally.
But as we saw, the proprietary information got in there. There's obviously security risk, but there's also this very real risk. We talked about more and how fast
Yeah,
technology is accelerating. And with what we're seeing on in artificial intelligence is maybe even something faster occurring.
it's fantastic. I
It's
know.
absolutely phenomenal. And so
Yep.
there's a real risk that like my competitor who makes the same widget, if they implement now they take the risk. They could very well yeah, they could
Yeah,
leapfrog
they'll
me.
leapfrog you. It's risk versus
So,
reward, and
it's
that's
risk
what
versus reward.
everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone's having to deal with that. You've got RPAs, right? Robotic
Yes.
process automation, driving efficiencies, helping people do their job better. Their applications are endless, and that's why
Really.
I used to read articles, AI is gonna take people's jobs. I read something the other day, Fortune 1 retailer, out there by 2026, like a third of the jobs are gonna be gone or something. I forget the exact detail, but the bottom line is people are going, gosh, maybe there is something, maybe there is a threat to the blue collar worker. And I remember telling my kids, all right, let's think about the industry in the future here. Let's make sure you're on the right side of technology. Let's be a part of those technology innovators that are helping drive these things so that you can know your future is bright. And healthcare is in there. There's going to be some places where you're just like a no-brainer. You're going to still have to have humans doing stuff. But the bottom
Right.
line, it's fascinating just to see the explosion. And I'm
Yeah.
excited about it.
I think one great solution that I saw come out of yesterday's error, right? So they couldn't retract the data that they put into the system, so that's a problem. They can't get it back. But I did see that they said they're now working potentially in bringing in a similar application in-house. So I don't know if they plan to rebuild the whole thing so that when they run their LLMs, their large language models, that it's an internal data set. They obviously are gonna want the processing, the way it communicates. But in terms of data out being accessible outwardly, I believe that what they said they're gonna try to bring this thing
Yeah.
in-house.
And maybe it might be from an architectural standpoint, data diodes. Hey, yeah, and keep things internal.
Yeah.
You can always suck information from the clouds and out there in the AI systems. But if the moment someone's trying to post something, won't be, I don't know how that's going to work. But you're
Mhm.
right, Dave. Maybe there are solutions out there. I'm always a big fan of that. I just don't think maybe we've got the answers to that. We haven't thought it through yet. But there is a solution to this to figure out how to do it. And that's
Let me tell you, I think this is interesting because this is a little bit of Comerit history. We came from the big enterprise transactional system space. That was our original, the genesis of our organization. And then when the transaction system became overloaded, the entire industry moved over to something called business warehouse. And then eventually that got overloaded, and there was a faster way to access your data using in SAP. It's the SAP HANA analytics system. It's
okay.
a system of hardware and software that will allow you to get at your data faster. As that matured, probably about 4.5 years ago, I actually proposed internally that we started to look at, hey, maybe we should provide AI. And we actually even did a number of predictive analytics projects. We started to look at RPA. Do you know what I found? That as we went out there to try to pitch this as an opportunity for our organization, the challenge was really preparing people's data. And this is actually goes right into the heart of what we do here over at Comerit is we now engage organizations to look at their advanced
Mhm.
analytics roadmap and strategy. And it becomes even more of an important topic now because if you do hope to deploy many of the tools that reside now inside of the hyperscalers. For a lot of people, our business is largely focused on data enablement, data cleansing as people move over to the cloud. So this is going back to potentially preparing your organization to deploy artificial intelligent models that reside with inside of the hyperscale or the different
That's
host of the cloud things that one thing that's amazing to me, if you look at Amazon, Azure, Google, they have already, if your data is within their cloud system or hosted there, they have thousands of AI tools built in there. And
Oh, absolutely.
this may
Yeah,
be a big. Yeah, there you go.
Microsoft just had an announcement about their security copilot. It's all AI based.
Yeah,
And I love that name because it's okay, you've got a pilot. It would be you're the pilot in whatever you're working on, right? But you have this co-pilot that's overseeing, that's helping, that's doing all the stuff, looking at situational awareness, helping this, helping that, all that stuff, tying in all these complex things, doing the heavy lifting for some of the most menial tasks, right?
mundane task or repetitive
Mundane
yeah,
tasks, driving efficiencies, giving you a heads up. If there is something that's happened in the environment, this Copilot system is supposed to help you, figure out the weird behaviors, tie them all together and that correlation equation and all that stuff so that you really can leapfrog your conclusions based on your analysis, based on the information that's provided. It's really quite uncanny. It's really quite fun.
so this is actually a good takeaway from this. We started off saying, "Hey, let's talk about is big business prepared to leverage artificial intelligence," right? And I think we zeroed in on the fact that certainly weigh the risk benefits because people are going to become better at
Yeah,
doing these things. But I think also, as I also mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, that the front runner appears to be at the moment ChatGPT, but I think it's interesting to make sure people realize there are lots of artificial intelligence opportunities
right,
for you out there. You don't have to be focused solely on this one aspect, especially if you're moving your data. If your data already resides with some of these other big cloud hosting organizations, there are a lot of things to look in there that help you automate the secure utilization
right.
of these tools. I think that's a pretty good takeaway. Um,
Yeah,
is
for
that
sure.
there are definitely other tools you recommended set up maybe an organization to look at it, but the reality is we have to look at it. We definitely have to look at it.
Yeah, yeah,
And
sure.
if you take it in-house, it'll be required, I believe, to build the proper data models in-house. I think that's probably the safest bet to do it. And we could probably list a whole nother set of rules, or what would you call them? A set of safety
Yeah,
guidelines.
safety bounds, guidelines, and different things for sure.
Yeah.
Most people don't understand that we have been living in a world with AI quite off for a long time.
Yep.
We have. The thing is, what's changed, let's just say artificial intelligence was being used for back before like Waze, right? When we first started using traffic apps, they're gathering all this information from all these nodes, cell phones, and gathering and figuring stuff out, making conclusions and figuring out traffic patterns and the best way to get from here to there based on what it knows. And that underneath all of that are large data sets where the systems are coming to conclusions and helping you do that. The thing is, artificial intelligence has been used for a long time for a
Yeah,
very specific,
good point.
small application in this one particular uh, product or widget or application. Let's just say that one particular application, right? What's changed now is now with OpenAI and all these platforms, these systems now touch across everything. So that same system now that we have access today can write malware, can help you on your historical essay, can do this, can do that. And now the world has just exploded with possibilities. And that's the difference. The difference is before AI was used in a very controlled contextual environment, an application towards looking at flows on the network for malicious, anomalous behaviors, right? Looking at
Yep.
from a cybersecurity standpoint.
Yep.
Or it might be user behavior analytics. There's tons of stuff I could talk about that. The companies out there that do that, UBA, UEBA, user and entity behavior analysis, right? Whatever that thing. Again, it's all these things, user behavior. But again, it's still controlled in that context. The signals those systems receive are specifically from security tech stack or login information from Active Directory or something like that. Again, though, it's still a very small subset. They're doing some complex things. I'm not saying they're not complex, but the thing is, it's still a very small contextual framework around these solutions, right? But now with OpenAI and chat, it is open to the whole world and people are throwing information into it by asking questions. I know someone who writes blogs, and she told me recently, yeah, I use that now. I'll write my blog, she said, and then I'll say, OpenAI, make this better. And she'd take the blog and throw it in there. And the thing spits out an amazing addendum to modifications to her original blog. She's like, this is fantastic. But now that system just got all the intelligence from the blog she was writing about. And now
Yeah.
that's accessible to everybody else. It just goes on and on.
So we've run out of time, but maybe we could close on this because I think you led us to a very good ending or closing point. It's called open AI for a reason, and I
It
think
is open as the as open as you can get, man.
Robert, man, thank you again. Geez, I didn't realize our time flew by so fast, but there is just so much we could talk about here. It is exciting times, but there is a reality behind what people need to
Yeah.
understand from a security standpoint. There's a lot. To be honest, the creators themselves, we don't know exactly where this is headed and what they may have unleashed. And just
Yep.
remember, it's called open for a reason. But Robert, thank you so much for joining me. I can't wait to do our next one. As I mentioned, there's a lot of people I would love to have them on this conversation. We may have to schedule a full hour though for that next episode. So
Maybe so. Always more to talk about, David. Thank you so much for having me on.
absolutely, thank you.